And now, Patria Mia by Ezra Pound, Part 4. It is strange how all taint of art or letters seems to shun that continent, America, said Mr. No, it is not strange, for every man, or practically every man with enough mental energy to make him interesting, is engaged in either business or politics. And our politics are by now no more than a branch of business. And why do interesting men concern themselves with such matters? That question was asked me a week ago. It is because these matters are very interesting. They are in flux. There is constant change of condition. The country is a different place each decade. There is no institution, bar the few general forms of government, of customs, of police, etc. There is no actual institution, no business relation which is static, and none to which there is more than temporary allegiance. It is very difficult for me to make clear my meaning, which is, in effect, simple enough. The sort of man who made America is nomadic, or at least migratory. Europe, in the day of Clodovic, was not more prey to swirls and tides of people. Out of races static, there came in the beginning the migratory element, and generation by generation, this divided itself into parts, static and migratory. And the former was marooned and left inert, and the latter pushed on to new forests, to mines, to grazing land. Of the sort that went into Kansas in the 50s, there went over the border into the new lands of Canada and British Columbia 150,000 in, I think, 1907. From the living members of my own family, I know of types of phases of civilization that have not only passed from one belt of land, but are even gone entirely. The static element of the Anglo-Saxon migration is submerged and well-nigh lost in the pool of the races which have followed them. It is very hard, with so much unsorted matter in my mind, to hold closely to the theme I had intended to disentangle, to wit, that the businessman of 1840 to 60, of 60 to 80, of 1912, is not the same. Nothing much is the same except the climate and its effects. The type of man who built railways, cleared the forest, planned irrigation, is different from the type of man who can hold on to the profits of subsequent industry. Whereas this first man was a man of dreams, in a time when dreams paid, a man of adventure, careless. This latter is a close person, acquisitive, rapacious, tenacious. The first man had personality and was, goddamn you, himself. Silas P. Hacker, or such like. The present type is primarily a mask. His ideal is the nickel-plated cash register, and toward the virtues thereof he doth continual strive and tend. The first man dealt with men, the latter deals with paper. Apart from business, he is a man of little comfort and lacking in conversation. I do not mean to say that the adventurer is extinct among us, or that the Anglo-Saxon is extinct. I simply mean that the type of mind that brought business success in 1870 does not bring it in 1910. And as for adventure, I know two men in New York, full men, and they have fought in battles and sailed before the mast, and lived on everything from $2.50 per week, precarious, to $7,500 per annum. And once, when they were both for a space clerks in an insurance office, I fell in with a certain versifier, one not wholly lacking in talents of imitation, and I took him with me to their boarding house, partly because I wished to dilute the boredom which his unattended society was causing me, partly because I thought it might do him good to be, for a space, among men. And in the course of the evening, he being bold as a lion, thinking himself in face of the representatives of hated commercialism, set himself to elevating conversation. He insisted on reading to us a bad poem of someone else's. I say that, at least, for him. From a current magazine, a profanation of some or other emotion. And we three others were vastly embarrassed to maintain our respective gravities. For in the first place, the clerks were born gentlemen, which the versifier was not. And in the second, they knew vastly more of books than ever he did, or than ever he will. And one of them has a rare bent for reading between Shakespeare and Rabelais, and he is a natural recounter of life, one wielding a vocabulary and a racy painted speech that would do no shame to his Elizabethan namesake. So for a space this puppet, this poser, who has never read anything printed before 1890, and whose whole art consists in the imitation of one living author, instructed us and simpered of higher things. And that is art in America, or rather it is literature. And that is why the American cannot be expected to take it seriously, and why it is left to the care of ladies' societies and of current events clubs, and is numbered among the cultural influences. And the diseases of our art, or let me say for the moment, of our literature, are several. Poetry is, in letters, the earlier form. A nation writes good poetry before it begins to write good prose. We seem to reverse this. There are some American books, contemporary, which are, though half in argot, well written. They have the same excellencies which one finds among our advertisement writers. For in the composition of advertisements, there is some attention paid to a living and effective style. Wherever there is an immediate ratio between action and profit, the American will at once develop his faculties. Apart from such symptomatic prose, there is no man now living in America whose work is of the slightest interest to any serious artist. It is the glory of a nation to achieve art, which can be exported without bringing dishonor on its origin. Letters are a nation's foreign office. By the arts, and by them almost alone, do nations gain for each other any understanding and intimate respect. It is the patriotism of the artist, and it is almost the only civic duty allowed him that he achieve such work as shall not bring his nation into world's eyes ridiculous. It is important that channels of the art be kept clear, or, to leave all these metaphors and strain another, letters are also to a nation what sextants and such like instruments are to a ship. It is of vital import that they be accurate. It is of little matter if they are handled by only a few. By them, and by them almost alone, can the administration of the nation know where she is at. The diseases of American letters are first, foremost, and primarily dry rot, magazitis. There are minor diseases. For instance, in poetry, there are certain poxes as follows. There is the school of virility, or red blood. It seems to imagine that man is differentiated from the lower animals by possession of the phallus. Their work reads like a Sandow booklet. There is the gorgeous school, following the respective worsts of Kipling and of Swinburne. Their aim is, it seems, to name as many constellations, and to encumber them with as many polysyllabic adjectives as possible, appropriate or unappropriate. There is the sociological school, which repeats in weak verse the ideas expressed in the prose of last year's magazines. There are under similar banner the post-Whitmanians. Now Whitman was not an artist, but a reflex, the first honest reflex, in an age of papier-mâché letters. He was the time and the people of 1860 to 80. That is perhaps as offensive as anything one can say of either. His followers go no further than to copy the defects of his style. They take no count of the issue that an honest reflex of 1912 will result in something utterly different from the reflex of 1865. There is about the feet of all these splashers the school of normal production, i.e., those who fill the pages with nice domestic sentiments inoffensively versified. And over all this there swells the appalling fungus of our better magazines. If you enjoy the content of High Americana, please consider supporting the channel, donating to Patreon linked below. Thank you very much.